Estamos tan felices y honrados de tenerles aquí para nuestro evento bilingüe, el Encuentro de Justicia Alimentaria. Estamos agradecidos de compartir este espacio y el tiempo con ustedes. As we strive to embed equity into our work, we must prioritize language access. So now I'm going to provide some instructions for how to best engage in this bilingual event. Luchamos para incorporar equidad en todos los aspectos de nuestro trabajo. Por lo tanto, el acceso al lenguaje es muy importante. Ahora voy a compartir unas instrucciones para tener la mejor experiencia en este evento bilingüe. So I'm going to share these instructions in English first. So this will be a multilingual event. Because of that, everyone needs to select their preferred language. If you're on a computer, you'll see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. You'll want to you'll want to click on that and select the language that you want to listen in. If you're on a tablet or on a phone, click the 3 dots, more, language interpretation, and then select your preferred language. Don't forget to press done. Este será un evento multilingüe. Todos deben escoger su idioma preferido. Si están en sus computadoras, presionen el icono de globo en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Si están en sus teléfonos o tabletas, hagan clic en los 3 puntitos más o more, seleccionen interpretación de idiomas y su idioma preferido. Y no olviden de presionar listo. Please, if you have any problem with the language, do not suffer in silence. Let us know in the chat. We have 2 interpreters here with us and their names are marked accordingly. Por favor, si tienen problemas con el idioma, no sufren en silencio. Comuníquelo en el chat con los intérpretes. Let's see some thumbs up. Are people feeling set up with the interpretation? Super. Muy bien.
Very good.
All right. Thank you again to everyone who has joined this conversation. Today's conversation will be centered around the challenges and opportunities for land access for farmers and ranchers in our region and beyond. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the power of community that we have here today. Something our colleague Hilda often reminds us of is that we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And what that means is there are so many strong and incredible individuals who have paved this path for us to be here together now and have this conversation together with our panelists about land access. We're so excited to introduce our speakers in just a moment. But we also need to acknowledge that today's systems and challenges that we face as a society are the direct result of 400+ years of land and labor theft. So I'm going to invite everyone to take a few breaths and ground ourselves in this moment. I'd like to acknowledge the labor upon which our country, state, and institutions are built. We must remember that our country is built on the labor of enslaved people who were kidnapped from the African continent and brought to the United States. And we recognize the continued contributions of their survivors. We acknowledge all immigrant labor, including voluntary, involuntary, and trafficked peoples who continue to serve in our labor force. Further, we acknowledge that as people are suffering from inequities, others are benefiting from them. This is a key part of our history. But we've come together in phenomenal ways to defy them as a community. So as we gather today to learn more about land access, we've also deemed it essential to acknowledge, recognize, and respect that we're on the lands of Indigenous people who were the first community stewards of this land. And many of those descendants continue to carry that heritage here in Central Texas today. In this acknowledgement, we recognize the ongoing and long-lasting relationship between Indigenous peoples and their colonized territories. And as we choose to fight for justice, an intersectional approach must acknowledge America's colonial history in order to ethically and usefully discuss other forms of discrimination. Let's lean into our own humanity today, remembering our own Indigenous roots, wherever your ancestors are from. Remembering our relationship with land as a part of our legacy, and remembering and thinking about how we in our organizations and institutions can bring humanity into our work. So now that we've grounded ourselves and acknowledged these truths, we want to really appreciate your patience and get going with this conversation. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Please rename yourself in the chat using the 3 dots so that we can know your name, your organization if you're affiliated with one, and your pronouns. And speaking of which, we'll dive into what is the Food Justice Encuentro? What are we here for today? So let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. So the Encuentro is an Austin-based community of practice that brings together social justice leaders interested in learning from one another and enhancing our efforts to create a more inclusive and equitable food system. In this community, we create a space that's welcoming and supportive. And here are some group agreements that we share together in this space. Next slide, please. Just take a moment to read through these. This is a space where we want everyone to share and to feel comfortable sharing. Maybe speak up if you're someone who's quieter in the space. This is a safe space. Anything that's learned here can leave here, but the personal stories of people can stay confidential here in our space. So we are upholding confidentiality and trust in this process. We respectfully share the mic. We're taking care of ourselves. It's a fundamental way that we can move forward. And our conversations will be real. So there might be moments when we say, oops, I didn't mean to say that, or ouch, that hurt me, or show some snaps or some emojis if we really like what's being said. Lastly, I'll just go over a couple more definitions before I pass it over to Amy Gallo to introduce our wonderful panelists today. We're so excited to have y'all here today. If we could just move over to the next slide. Food justice, we define, well, Just Food in New York defines as communities exercising their right to grow, sell, and eat healthy food. Healthy food is fresh, nutritious, affordable, culturally appropriate, and grown locally with care for the land, with care for the well-being of the land, workers, and animals. And on the next slide, I have just photos of our wonderful panelists today. And with that, that is everything that I wanted to share with you all to welcome us here to the space together to provide some grounding. And now I'm excited to pass the mic over to my colleague, Amy Gallo, SFC's Farm Viability Director, to introduce our panelists and moderate our discussion today.
Thank you, Simone. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with y'all. It seems like now is the moment to talk about land access and to work on these issues. And so I'll give a little background about what we're talking about when we talk about land access, and then I'll introduce the panelists and get into some discussion. So why are we talking about land access? This seems like a pretty simple relationship. Farmers grow food on land, which they access through ownership or leasing. They access land through incubator farm programs, by cooperative ownership model, by working multiple or decentralized plots of land. So there's a lot of different ways that people find themselves growing food. But we're talking about this because the average age of farmers in the US is increasing every day. The majority of current farm owners will die or retire, leaving their farmland behind with no one to care for these farms or grow the food that we eat. According to a recent survey by National Young Farmers Coalition, finding affordable land to buy is the top challenge for young farmers. This is even more challenging for Black and Indigenous farmers who've been harmed by government disinvestment and systemic racism. 9.3 acres of farmland are lost each day in Travis County, which is where we are right now in Central Texas. Over the last 11 years, Travis County has lost 25% of its available farmland. But this year, people are really talking about this. The USDA recently set aside $300 million for projects to help farmers access land and capital. And so it seems like right now we have an opportunity to really dig in and address some of these issues that have been going on for a very long time. And that's why we brought you all here today. And I'll give a very brief intro of our panelists, and then I'll let them talk about themselves and introduce themselves to you. So first up, we have April Jones. April is the founder of the Pinehurst Farmers Market and is originally from Akron, Ohio. She's currently in South Carolina and advocates for her community as part of the food justice and food sovereignty movement. She is passionate about community gardens and farmers markets. She is a writer, public speaker, blogger, recipe developer, book reviewer, and more. Krisztian Varsa is the Working Farms Fund Associate at the Conservation Fund. He is supporting the transition of critically threatened farmland to the next generation of farmers in Georgia. Prior to joining the Conservation Fund, Krisztian was the Conservation Director for Athens Land Trust, where he protected working lands for future generations of Georgians and started new conservation programs for youth and historically underserved farmers. And Lucille Contreras is the CEO and founder of Texas Tribal Buffalo Project. This project was created to restore the traditional relationship between Lipan Apache and their relatives, the bison. They provide indigenous communities of Texas a pathway to tribal and food sovereignty. She is excited to now live once again in the traditional homeland of her ancestors, the Lipan Apache, and traditional home range of the Southern Plains bison. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of stuff, so we'll just get into this and I'll put the question back to our panelists. So can you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and what is your connection to this topic? I don't know who wants to go first.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'm April Jones, and I'm originally, like you said, from Akron, Ohio. I'm super proud of my hometown. There's lots of fun, amazing things going on in Ohio. And so I work across the country in the food movement. And what I really love about working and consulting and speaking across the country is that I get to see our beautiful, fabulous country, but also how the land is different in every single location. Some places, are more flat, some have more hills, some have more trees, some have really delicious soil, and some have soil issues, right? And so I love to see how we as a country are kind of coming together around the land. And especially in our urban cities, I'm seeing that there's definitely been more thought and interest in growing your own food. So I'm happy to be here.
I think I'll step in next since it looks like Lucille stepped away for a moment. Oh, there she is. Okay, well, I'll just keep going. So I originally come from Maryland, and I'm a first generation American. My family is Hungarian originally, and I currently live in Athens, Georgia. And I have worked for about a dozen years in conservation and restoration in a number of communities around the country. And most recently, like Amy was mentioning, I worked in a organization called Athens Land Trust, where we worked on supporting historically underserved farmers, specifically in Georgia, that was mostly African-American farmers, in accessing and being supported by federal farm programs that they have been historically kept out of. I moved into my work with the Conservation Fund because I wanted to be proactive in transitioning farmland to the next generation of farmers through this program that we call the Working Farms Fund. And it's a program that buys land for the next generation of farmers. We've started it here outside of Atlanta, Georgia, buying farmland for farmers who have experience and want to grow food for their communities. And so I'm really excited to talk a little bit more about why that's important to us, why that farmland should be protected, and how the Working Farms Fund is helping to bridge that gap, but also what that might look like in places like Central Texas and around Austin. 9 acres a day is a scary number to me, and we want to make sure that land is there for our people, for future generations.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. It was great to meet you, April, and good to see you again, Krisztian. My name is Lucille Contreras. On my father's side, Joe Contreras, I am Lipan Apache from the state of Coahuila, northern Mexico. On my mother's side, I am Mexica from the state of Jalisco, Mexico. And if it's okay, I want to show y'all some pictures while I am talking about myself. I was originally born in San Antonio, Texas, and a few years ago, I had this amazing dream and vision to help rematriate our food and our reconnection to each other as Indigenous people. I was recently moving back to Texas from Pine Ridge, South Dakota, where I lived the past 6 years. My introduction to buffalo as relatives came through Knife Chief Buffalo Nation Society in Porcupine, South Dakota, a traditional Oglala Lakota family-based nonprofit. All of my life, I had the beauty and benefit of growing up with a family that is dear to me, noticing what Creator guides you to in your life. And that's how I've lived my life. And all along the way, so many messages help me in my life. One thing that I've missed my whole life growing up in Texas until I left Texas was the reconnection with our own indigeneity in Texas, which has been very dysfractionalized and has caused separation of our families.
Uh-oh, looks like we lost Lucille there for a moment. Let's see if we can get her back. Okay, well, while we wait for Lucille to get back on, my next question was again a group question just to get us thinking a little bit more about this. Krisztian, I'll kick this over to you first. What is happening now that wasn't happening 5 years ago? What are the new opportunities you see out there, and how are you plugging in?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I see Lucille might be back now, and I want to make sure we get
There she is.
though.
Yeah.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
we lost you for a second.
No, it's thundering and lightning here. So I just switched to my iPhone. But thank you for letting me jump back in here really quickly. And
Yeah, please.
so what I wanted to say was it's such a privilege to be able to live and work here on the homeland of my Apache communities, but to all Indigenous communities of Texas and our allies. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucille. Yeah, so I'll state my question again, and then maybe we'll go Krisztian, then Lucille, then April. But what's happening now that wasn't happening 5 years ago? What are the new opportunities you see out there, and how are you plugging in?
So my colleagues at the Conservation Fund had this idea for the Working Farms Fund about 5 years ago. And I think they were responding to the national crisis around farmland and land access that they saw already coming toward us, and has been coming toward us for a very long time now. But it has been an interesting 5 years. There has been a pandemic. The country culturally in the national headlines addressed racial and social inequity at a level that it had not for a number of very good reasons. And the political environment has shifted significantly in that time frame. And for that reason, I think that there is now a real opportunity at this moment, but also we want this opportunity to continue. But what has happened now, recognizing these shifts and seeing the at least the national recognition of what has happened to, for example, Black farmers over the last 100 years, going from, the 11% to 2% of the ownership of the farmland of the country. There's a real movement at federal program levels, like at the USDA, to actually do something about it, which is something that has not been on their radar for a long time. Or if it was on their radar, it was because they were responding to, Pickford versus Glickman lawsuits and things like that. This is a proactive release of funds. Like, for example, what you mentioned, Amy, there is a large amount of $300 million is going to be released to support land access around the country. And that opportunity is not something that we have ever seen before. We hope we continue to see it into the future, but it is a major shift in the mentality of how farming can work and how we need to address farm transition in this country if we want to continue to have access to food in our communities. So I think the pandemic creating supply chain issues that continue to ripple to this day, the national reckoning around equity and farmland ownership for the last 100 years, and this increasing spotlight on what it means to support a farmer in growing food for their community, and how much it takes to be successful as a farmer, and how broken not only the land transition system is, but also just the food system in general, and what it's going to take to start breaking down those many barriers to success. That's my thought.
Thank you. And Lucille, I mean, I know your farm is relatively new to you, your ranch with the bison. What's happening with you now that wasn't happening even 5 years ago? Or what additional opportunities are you seeing now that seem new?
Yeah, thank you for asking, Amy. Definitely new for me is coming back home to Texas. Coming back home and bringing with me a basket of knowledge, skills, tools, networking, relatives back home. It's almost like my ancestors sent me away for many years to learn and to bring these tools back home that will help, again, rematriate. For those who maybe aren't familiar with this term, rematriate. What that is bringing together our Indigenous women perspective and life ways with empathy, with love, with compassion, with wisdom, and with leadership as life givers to help heal and reconnect with the land, with our communities, and with our traditional foods. Because our ancestors were persecuted, because our ancestors know and knew that it was lethal in Texas in the 1800s and even the early 1900s to be identified as Apache. Our people have generations known survival. And so what is new here for me is our USDA beginning farmer and rancher loan that we acquired to purchase this land here that you see in my background. And also, I am seeing such a wonderful and beautiful movement in Texas with so many Indigenous people and our allies to help our homeland and to help our future generations to have a better quality of life. The food that we lost in the past because of colonization was what sustained us, mind, body, and soul. And so bringing this food back into our diets for Lipan Apache, that is buffalo meat, as well as some of the other foods. And buffalo definitely need land. We're currently on 77 acres and have 15 head of buffalo. And I'm so grateful. I really want to stop right now and give thanks so much for the rain. Give thanks to Creator for this beautiful rain, because our grass has needed it. And I know the buffalo are outside just loving it. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that buffalo are frolicking in the rain right now. So April, yeah, what are you seeing out there that feels new to you?
Yeah, I was like writing notes. Everybody had such great comments. I was like, yes, I love that. I love this. This is such a great talk. So I'm thankful again for being here. I think that the key thing that I wanted to touch on is that I love that the USDA is getting on board, right? I love that our federal government is catching the vision, right? And taking steps to make us all more resilient and strong and amazing. And I think that the key thing that we saw in the pandemic was that our supply chains are very fragile, right? They're super duper fragile and everything is very tenuous. And that I think that the key for us as a country and us in our regional areas of the country, wherever we are, is to really start thinking about building our own resilient supply chains, right? And making sure that our communities, right, everybody's community can be large or small, is resilient and is insulated from these outside market forces, whether it's encouraging people to, have chickens, encouraging people to do microgreens, working on our urban spaces and saying land is valuable, but it's also a communal asset, right? That we all are a part of. A lot of our cities, counties, states have vacant land that should be utilized for food production, right? Because it's a community good. It's for all of us. And we all have to eat every single day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. So we should be coming together around this commonality, right, of food and growing our food. And it allows us also, lastly, to connect to our own regional foodways. So like I'm from Ohio, and which I've mentioned before, but we have a lot of like international flair. So I actually have been to Hungary, but before I went to Hungary, I have had Hungarian food, right? Like that's like part of my childhood. That's part of my life being. We have a lot of like sauerkrauts and beets, pickled beets. And I mean, it's just really like, it's really kitschy, but when you go to these other countries, and then you partake in the Hungarian food and you're like, Hungarian paprika, I love you. I've had you before. And so, that's the beauty of America, right? Is that we all have different regional stories, different regional ways of moving and being, and food is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think I really want to thank you for recognizing snacks as an integral part of your diet during the day. And B, another thing I just feel like from the pandemic, that fact that people know what a supply chain is, or that's part of our common parlance now is, that's new, right? So that's something we're seeing. But yeah, April, I'll keep it on you for a second. I know you work in regions all around the country and with folks at different levels of the food system, farmers, nonprofits, other organizations. So I want to see if you have an interesting case study to talk to us about. What's an interesting solution or conundrum that you've seen people overcome recently?
Well, I am actually, my dad's family is from New Orleans, and so in Louisiana. And so I go there often, and people really think of New Orleans as a party place, and it is a party place. But it's also a food place, right? Amazing food. And then they're also right near Mississippi, and then they have the water, and the Gulf of Mexico is right there. So people don't always, and the bayous, hello bayou, that have the crawfish and have the crabs, right? People do crabbing. So what I really love and have seen as a case study is that New Orleans is definitely, I think, one of the better urban ag centers in the country. And I think it also has to do with the cultural community of the area, where people really love to communicate. They love the language, right? And they're into communication, honest, forthright communication. And then that like tiered, layered communication. So it's not quite direct, but they tell you a story. They're great storytellers. And I think that's really great about the food movement, because each thing that you're eating, whether it's like a kale or if it's a beet or if it's crabs, they have a story. Like, where did the crab live? And then when you think about, oh, what's the crab up to? And is the water clean, right? Because you are eating the crab and you want your little crab to be in nice, clean water. And so I've really seen that they're able to take a lot of the connections in the food system and really kind of like educate people around these environmental issues that can sometimes seem really overwhelming and just really hard and difficult. And then I also like that they're able to use their land space in the city. They have a lot of really cool urban farms. And New Orleans is such a small city that the farms are all connected. Some of them are actually within walking distance from like the city center. So if you are a person who doesn't want a car or you don't have means for a car, everything is really walkable, which I really like, which is also part of the French history of great architecture and urban planning of New Orleans. So that's really amazing. So yeah, I think that New Orleans is definitely a great case study where they're really incorporating their cultural values into the food system and they're leaning into it. They're like, we're from New Orleans, we're from Louisiana, and this is the way, right? This is how we do it. This is how it's going to be done. And I love that, right? I love that. So.
Thank you. Yes, I think storytelling is so important when we talk about food systems. This is such a personal thing for all of us. So I think, Lucille, that sort of segues into what I would love to talk to you about more. You know, how is your work in Texas connected to your community and your values? And maybe you can share more about how your model of operation and engagement goes beyond the 77 acres that you are on right now.
Thank you. Yes, our, the basis is that Texas Tribal Buffalo Project, I'm the CEO and founder of Texas Tribal Buffalo Project, as Amy introduced me. And our project is connected by community because our mission and goals are to reconnect our communities, are to reconnect our indigenous communities specifically to each other. And our values are that we are all related. That's the premise and the most profound value that I feel very comfortable to say all indigenous people carry with them as a way of life. That we are all related, each and every one of us. In addition to that, we are also related to the soil. We're related to the grass, the rain, and all living things. That, I think, is, the basis of how Texas Tribal Buffalo Project goes about connecting our community and carrying our values with us, so to speak, on the backs of the buffalo. And it is wholeheartedly through the buffalo that we have been able to connect with so many people, not just in Texas, but across all of Turtle Island. And another thing that, in regards to models of our operations, is I have 30 years of experience in IT. I carry with me a pretty wide assorted IT skills, from IT systems analysts and all that around it. And what that has taught me over the years is to actually use, STEM, and use these methods of first defining our problems, doing the research, developing, by using the inspiration, the visions, and then choosing a path that would be different from academics, is choosing a path of inspiration from our ancestors. I wholeheartedly can't stress enough that I feel truly that our ancestors walk behind us and with us and in front of us. And then, of course, creating the plan, implementing the plan, testing it, communicating it, and doing it all over again. And that's actually part of the ways that our ancestors developed before colonization. How could Aztecs build pyramids? No power tools. With our minds, with our hearts and our wisdom. And these are the tools, these are the methods that I really do bring with when I am working through Texas Tribal Buffalo Project. This goes beyond land because we're bringing back our traditional foods to everybody. And it is primarily bison meat, but in networking with our partners, we're also bringing back our other healthy foods to our people. So many people suffering from diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, dialysis, because of our decolonized diet, which I'm so grateful that now we're able to help. We've been able to donate meat to some of our relatives throughout the state of Texas and across Turtle Island, as well as provide ways that we're accessing markets and marketing and continue to growing. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucille. Yes, that's so interesting and important to have that connection. And Krisztian, so the Working Farms Fund has done most of their land access work outside of Texas. So I'm wondering, what made you look to Texas here for expansion? What's unique here compared to the other regions you work in?
Well, Lucille is in Texas, so that's a good start.
Oops, looked like Krisztian froze for a sec.
Oh, I thought I had lost. Yeah.
I think he froze. We're all still here.
I just really appreciate everything you said, Lucille.
There you are.
Oh, I'm sure he'll come back in just a second. But we'll circle back to Krisztian once he gets back on. Lucille, I'm wondering, and April as well, you know, Lucille, I feel like I've heard you express, oh, there you are, back again. That's okay. This is the new world we're in. It's all technical difficulties on Zoom all the time.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, please.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I was just saying I really appreciated what Lucille said, and so just wanted to, you know, say, so we launched this program called the Working Farms Fund in Georgia. We have bought 7 farms and almost 700 acres on behalf of next generation farm businesses, with a wide variety of farm business types and people and ideas and food productions and all of that. And so, you know, we call it a patient pathway to affordable farmland ownership. And it's a model that we think is going to work for some people. It may not be for everybody, but it is an idea that being able to have access to land is a critical step, but that also wealth building and intergenerational land access is going to be achieved through the current systems of ownership. And we just, you know, part of that is accepting that there's a system we have to work within, and that to provide access back to people that need to have access to it, that this is a tool that we have in our toolbox. And so the Working Farms Fund buys farmland that we match to a next generation farm business. We lease that land to the farmer for a market rate lease. They build their farm infrastructure. We support them in growing their business, finding new markets, building out the infrastructure and the necessary tools and equipment to succeed as a farmer. And then we sell the farm affordably to them by using a permanent conservation easement, which keeps the farm in farming forever. And the reason that we consider Texas as a viable location for this kind of a program is that it has kind of the four big important parts that we think are critical to success of a local food system for this program. One is farmers that need land access, farm businesses that are ready to grow and grow more food for their communities. Two is farm support services and systems. Groups like Sustainable Food Center, other Food Shed Austin, other Farm Share Austin, other local groups who are providing those critical steps and support services for the farmers. Three is that there is land loss happening. We're losing farmland and we need to protect it for these future generations. And then four, Frank, to be very honest with you, is that there are interested people who are willing to fund us buying the farmland for the farmer. A critical part of this is that we are able to raise money to then buy the farm for the farmer and provide that on-ramp to ownership. And Texas, as a large community, is a rapidly urbanizing population where farmland loss is accelerating and food security remains low. And so we feel it has that unique combination of need and resources and opportunities that would really fit for the Working Farms Fund to, succeed in under those circumstances. So that's kind of our thinking about Texas just being a really, there's just so much opportunity. And as I can see from this group here, a lot of interest from a lot of different groups around land access and being able to, rematriate and re-indigenize the ownership of the farms.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I'm sure there are many other regions. I feel like, April, were you going to add to that too?
No, I was just nodding my head like, yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure we're seeing this in a lot of places across the US, this unique combination of factors that we seem to have here. But yeah, I'm wondering, what are y'all's strategies for staying connected with your communities after the term of a project, ends? How are we keeping the momentum going?
I think that
Go ahead.
it's just all about relationships, right? And I think that in our country, I don't want to say we've lost our social skills. I don't want to say we've lost our cultural values, but I think that we have not, I think we've been persuaded by corporations, right? About value and how we value things. And people are super valuable. And, money is valuable too, but people are super duper duper important. And so when we're in these spaces, it's just always an opportunity to learn and to listen and to see a different perspective, right? And to hear a different story. And so I always love working on projects, but even when a project ends, you still have that relationship there. And you can always call a friend and say, hey, friend in Cleveland, Ohio, what's going on? How are things going? What are you up to? What are the weather patterns like? So I'm in South Carolina and we've had climate change, surprise, surprise. And we've had extreme heat. And so I couldn't plant this year from July until October. The heat was so oppressive. I had roses, they came up, they bloomed, but no scent, because it was so hot. And now I have a couple roses that are still blooming, and now they have beautiful rose essence scent, which is amazing. And so for me as a grower, I'm like, oh no, this is awful. And my soil quality has degraded because of the heat. And so, I'm talking to my friends in Minnesota and Cleveland and Akron, what's going on there? And they're saying, oh, it's just a little bit warmer, but I'm still able to grow. And so because I have relationships with them, I'm able to have those conversations. And so through these partnerships and through this sustainable work, we're creating our own networks to kind of see the lay of the land and how these climate impacts are, affecting our businesses, affecting our land production, affecting our soil quality. So I think that's the fun part about the work.
And Lucille, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, for us, for Texas Tribal Buffalo Project, I would say that making Texas Tribal Buffalo Project sustainable and meaningful is to grow this, not necessarily into a program, but an actual way of life. Something that is so deeply rooted in all of our communities that it turns into a way of life, a way of living. And as I've said before, the acknowledging our relatives, acknowledging each other, each and every one of you as our relatives, building those values, or really it's re-implementing those values that many of us have already had. All of us come from earth cultures. All of us descend from people of earth cultures. And so also the sustainability comes in connecting with, for me, mentors like Winona LaDuke from Honor the Earth, and Mark Tilson from Tonka Fund and Tonka Bar, and looking at those generational leaders that are older than me and following in their footsteps, but also bringing my own skills and knowledge to the table. And it's not about even coming to the table, but it's how can we all build this table together? The sustainability definitely is rooted in the care of what is going to happen in the future for our earth, for our families, for all of the future generations. And so that is how we are carrying forward and building sustainability. We are the seeds that our ancestors planted, and we continue to lay seeds and foundations for the future.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Yeah, and Krisztian, what does the Working Farms Fund sustainability look like?
Keep making me talk after Lucille. It never goes well. Lucille, that was beautiful. So echoing what Lucille just said, there is nothing that will last longer than the land. And so I'm not worried about the moment. We feel very strongly that the future of farming, the future of land, is in our hands. And you know, things change, politics change, money will come and go, but at least from the way that the Conservation Fund works and the way the Working Farms Fund is intentional with the work that we do, we are really making a decades-long commitment to the communities that we establish our work in. We are not trying to buy one farm and walk away and expect that the food system is going to be solved. The land transition and farmland and the support systems therein are going to take generations and generations to fix the problems that we have wrought over hundreds of years now. So it's not, we don't expect to fix everything immediately, but we do think that by being very intentional and anchoring the Working Farms Fund outside of major cities across the country, like Austin and Houston and San Antonio, we will be able to make that decades-long commitment to buying not 1 or 3 or 5, but 20 and 50 and 100 farms to transition the future of the food system. So that is really my long-term hope and the way that we see the work that we do moving forward and the commitments that we're making in our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose I have one more question just to end on sort of a hopeful note here. I'll pose to everyone. Really, if you could snap your fingers and everything's fixed, what is the dream? What does it look like? What does it feel like to live what we're working for here? I mean, Krisztian, you can go first if you don't want to follow anyone.
That's fair. Let them do better than me. That's good. I think it involves, I don't know, in my head, I come from a city planning background. That's my educational background, and in all the books and on all the posters, when you do city planning work, there are these drawn pictures of what the ideal city looks like. It's a place where people live close to food. There is, you know, everyone lives close to each other. There are multiple options for getting around your community, from cars to buses to bikes. So in my mind, I always kind of envision this community that is connected to the land. Not everybody has to live on their own land, but they're connected to the land and to the food through their food system. And they're able to know their farmer and know their food and understand why it's important. And the farmers are able to grow food that provides them a livelihood that is safe and secure and doesn't burn them out and makes them feel good. And they have enough money. And, you know, sometimes I wish a lot of things. I wish farmers were paid a lot more money for what they do. I think we'd have a lot more farmers. And so that's another thing that I'm really working on, is how do we make farming a real job, a real career? Because I think there are a lot of people who are committed to it and willing to make it happen, but to make it a career where you make, I don't know, doesn't it seem like they should be able to make what a doctor makes or anything like that? They're providing the same health that many doctors are able to provide. And so I think a snap my fingers is that farmers are appreciated the way that they should be, and communities are valuing them, and intertwined between the urban and rural interface, and everyone is working together toward that. Food is medicine. Thank you, Arlo.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that the one thing that the pandemic has shown us, it was really rough, right? We all made it through though. But well, some people did, most of us did, you know, we were all going through that process together, is that there are a lot of resources in our country, right? There's a lot of money, one. There's a lot of structural support in our nonprofits, in our educational institutions, right? And then you have the counties, and then you have the cities. And so there is a lot of abundance in our country, which I think is really always exciting and amazing. And I think that we just have to reframe our views and our thoughts about the land, and then also farmers, and that it's a communal good, right? It helps everybody, it helps all of us, and we should be supporting things that have a communal good. So our cities should have funds, right? They have funds for the police officers, the firefighters, the paramedics, our schools, and they should fund farmers, right? I like that idea. Let's fund our farmers, because they need to be subsidized. They need to have a high quality of life, right? They're giving us super duper high value, and they're giving us cultural crops that we love, like, you know, cabbage for sauerkraut, etc. And they are feeding us, giving us amazing food. And then they're helping us because they're actually lowering the tax burden. Our kids are going to be smarter and brighter and happier to go to school. And our hospitals aren't going to be as overcrowded because people are going to be healthier. And crime will actually go down because there's a direct correlation between the type of food that you're eating every day and crime. If you're hungry and you're tired and you're malnourished, your brain isn't thinking correctly, you're making poor decisions. But if you have wonderful, healthy food, it lowers crime. So farmers are definitely our future, and we should be investing in them, like we invest in the stock market, or we invest in a bond, or, you know, you invest in buying a house, right? Because you need shelter, but we also need food. So our communities, our cities, our county councils, our state legislators should be supporting farmers. And I think that sometimes if you can get it right on a local level, the federal government, they're like, oh, that's a good idea. And they just come right on behind.
Yes, that is totally awesome. I wholeheartedly agree. I'm right in line with both April and Krisztian. I completely agree with what y'all said. And I would add that for myself, each and every day, I give thanks that I am living my dream. I am living the dream that I'm just so grateful. Each and every day, I am grateful to be here on this land and be with the buffalo. It's amazing. I have to pinch myself. At first, I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh my God, what have I done? You know, this is so much work. This is so hard. But honestly, what I realize is it has nothing to do with me. Honestly, I'm just the vehicle. I'm just the helping. I truly I'm dedicating my entire life, the rest of my life, to help rematriate. And I'm really proud of Krisztian for using rematriation and, you know, and what he is saying and the words that he's saying as well, because honestly, you know, coming from an Indigenous woman perspective and experience, it's like bridging the allyship that needs to be built with all people, And if I could snap and have things change or be more different, I would love to see the Buffalo Corridor reestablished by connecting the rangeland of farmers and ranchers and public space and state-owned spaces and government land and all of the land, so that our buffalo relatives could actually go back and migrate. You know, if you're asking for dreams, that would be the ultimate dream that I would love to see. Because again, for me and for what I envision and what I live is that because the buffalo were almost exterminated, because the buffalo suffered greatly and their ranges were taken away from them, their way of life was taken away from them, that affected everything else. And I can go into so many tangents that I won't right now, but yes, I would love to see that. I would love to see Buffalo Corridor reestablished and open up from Canada to northern Mexico and be a part of helping that. I think it may be possible, not in my lifetime maybe, but in the future. And with work that all of us are doing together, it's all related. Another thing that I think would be amazing is if we had an Indigenous woman as president, and I think a domino effect would change. And I'm also very proud of the USDA Farm Service Agency and having Zach Ducheneau as the superintendent of the Farm Service Agency. He's Oglala Lakota, and so he is definitely carrying that perspective with him in the Farm Service Agency, and I have experienced it very, very closely.
Thank you all so much. Lucille, it was beautiful. What a beautiful dream. I think we all have similar versions of this big dream, but that's all of the questions that I had for y'all as far as the panel goes. I think Simone is going to introduce our breakout rooms.
Yes, I am. Y'all, thank you again so much. I feel just really open and full of ideas and excited to dive into some more conversation. And so we've set up some breakout rooms for us to actually have an opportunity to engage with each of our panelists kind of in a more intimate setting, a one-on-one. So we're going to open up the breakout rooms here in just a moment, and you'll have a chance to select which of our panelists you'd like to engage a little bit more deeply in. I know this is going to be really hard because they're all fantastic people, and I'm sure you'll have a chance to continue to connect with these folks in the future. So this will not be your, of course, only time to talk with these folks. But if there's something that any of our panelists spoke about that you really want to dive into more, or, kind of where they're coming from and you feel connected to that, however you want to make your choice is up to you. If you need any help making those choices, please reach out to any of us here at SFC. We can place you in a breakout room if that's helpful. We're going to have about 20-25 minutes for our breakouts so that we can discuss what this, this movement and this information and this vision means for us and how we can engage as a community and as individuals. And then we'll come back as a big group, kind of share what we learned, see if there's any other lingering questions for our panelists before we close out our event today at 11:30. So we're going to go ahead and open up those breakout rooms now.
Hey.
Hi, April. Let me go ahead and pause recording maybe. It's kind of, I'm recording this breakout too, maybe. So I might pause it just for the large one. What do you think?
That's good.
The group, do you hear that in the group?
Yes, the danger I feel is that, and from an Indigenous perspective, because we have in Texas especially Texas has really never acknowledged our land loss, not just Lipan Apache, Carancoa, Tapilan, Coahuitecano, Carrizo, Come Crudo, there's so many tribes. There's so many tribes that the danger is not having that connection again. That's the danger, I feel, is Indigenous people not having that connection with the land, which is why I've opened up Texas Tribal Buffalo Project for people to come and visit, people that don't have access to land, to come here and feel what it's like to walk barefoot on the dirt, feel what it's like to be close proximity to a buffalo. I see that Celine has her hand up. Her hand up.
Lo voy a decir en español. Creo que Simón me va a ayudar un poquito ahí para ustedes. Simón nos preguntaba en el grupo que estábamos separados de los demás, cómo
The
afecta
other ones, how it will affect to not give the priority to conserve land, to grow. So, adding to what Lucille mentioned, what I was foreign to this, I think it's very important we can support agriculture, especially in the local area or at the state level, because if we don't do this, we're gonna reduce the possibilities to really influence, to have better prices to the population, so we can give the value of the mission of what we are organizing, that we were able to bring like healthy food, better food, nutrition to the population, especially in the people that are around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Selene. Any other thoughts? What are the consequences if we don't prioritize land access as a community?
Control remains would remain in the bigger powers, and there's no guarantee that we would have non-GMOs, for example, and things like that.
Hannah, you work directly with farmers that are in SFC's network. I wonder if you could share a little bit about what you're hearing around this topic from the farmers that come to our farmers markets or are producing regionally and selling into local markets here in Central Texas.
I'm hearing that there's great demand, but most of the farmers don't have access to land. So they may be maxed out on their 1 to 5 acre property, and they could sell more if they could grow more, but they can't get onto land because it's so overpriced and inaccessible in Central Texas. And then on the other hand, you have people constantly asking, like, where's the local food? Where can I get local vegetables? And there's only so much. The farmers market vendors sell out within a few hours usually, and there's just not enough to keep up.
Thanks, Hannah.
interesting. In this region, I've often heard almost the opposite problem. Like my farmers here will say, we could grow more, but there's nowhere to sell it. Just the market is not there, the interest is not there. So that is something that is, it's an interesting, like sort of reversed mirror problem, but I don't know. Then we have a year like this year and there isn't enough. So we'll see how that is as the future unfolds.
How does this topic connect to the food movement more broadly? So specifically in the context of food insecurity and food justice. I know there are a lot of folks here who work on the food access and food justice side when it comes to access to healthy food for consumers. Does anyone want to share, how this topic connects with that movement or with your work?
Can you say a little bit more, Simone?
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? Access to healthy food is limited in so many communities, and yet we have so much land in production in various ways, right? Whether that's industrial food production or more local, regional, diversified food production. And I guess here at SFC, we're working on increasing access to healthy food for all communities in Austin and really making sure that locally and regeneratively produced food is available to all communities. But we can recognize that as land becomes increasingly more under demand and right, like big dollars from big corporations are coming in and buying it up.
Right.
Let's draw some connections between our effort around food justice and access and the effort around justice and sovereignty when it comes to land access.
Okay, thank you. For Texas Tribal Buffalo Project, it was very important for us to get our EBT food service nutrition license so that we could be able to have buffalo meat, bison meat, Iani. Iani is how we say buffalo in Lipan Apache. To have this meat, which I feel is medicine, accessible to all, by literally, I travel so much across the state, and almost everywhere I go, I bring a freezer of bison meat, ground, ribeye steaks, all this delicious meat, so that there are communities that don't have access to, say, natural grocers. And where can people find buffalo meat? We'll call Lucille and she will bring it. And I have been getting calls from all over the state, even outside of the state, to bring bison meat. And accepting EBT food stamp has been able to just broaden that range of folks that have accessibility to the meat, as well as making donations of the meat to pretty much anybody who really needs it.
Thank you, Lucille. Are there any folks who work here in Austin or across Texas or in general who are working on food access who want to share a little bit more about how this topic relates to your goals and work or life? Hannah, I see you off mute.
Yeah, I'm feeling triply called to step up and speak, Simone. My name's Hannah Thornton. I'm the food access director at SFC. And I think part of the reason I was holding back in this conversation is that I'm, I engage in this topic every day at a very kind of focused level on like programmatic outcomes and immediate access to food. And for me, the topic of land access and the conversation that has been so beautifully facilitated here and the contributions from Lucille and Krisztian and April have we're called to think about it at a larger level. And so I've been trying to sort out those larger level thoughts in my head. I mean, I think for me, ultimately, it comes down to control and the way that the production of food has been used to control humans over the course of centuries, of millennia, potentially as long as we have been human. And so as some of the other commenters have pointed out, you know, insofar as the means of controlling food are the means of producing food are controlled by folks at a higher place in the hierarchy in the system, there's always going to be inequity. There's always going to be injustice, and that, you know, food is so central to who we are as humans. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, as April said, but also sharing culture, remembering who we are. Our ancestral foodways, the foodways that we have come to know as humans, and the inability to participate in those foodways, to access those foodways, to own those foodways. There's a hollowing effect at an individual level. There's a hollowing effect at a neighborhood level, at a community level, at an ancestral level. And that, I mean, so I'm probably not specifically addressing what you wanted to address, Simone, but I think that's like the core of food access, right? And for me, the way that land access and food access are connected, if we're thinking about food access, we can't just be, I'm a registered dietitian and I was trained to provide nutrients, and we can't just be providing nutrients. It can't just be about calories and protein and carbohydrates. It really has to be about the spirit of it. And land access for me is a very key component of how spirit is maintained within food access. So apologies if none of that was clearly stated, but I was trying to work it together in my head.
It's beautiful, Hannah. Thank you. Anna Marie, did you want to share?
Sure. So, hi everybody. I work with the Texas Center for Local Food as an education specialist. I'm based in Austin, but our organization is centered in Elgin, Texas, which is just outside of the city. And our work centers around providing education and technical assistance to farmers as well as farmers markets. And my area of specialty is running our Farm to Kids after school program, which is K through 8 after school programming that centers on cooking and gardening for the youth. And so thinking about food access, I think there's a big piece there about simply making local food a familiar thing in the lives of families and youth, and giving them the skills to engage with their local food system. So we partner with local farms to bring veggies into our classroom space and make fun dishes, both things that are familiar and things that are new to students. And we also host farm tours a few times a year, which bring students out to local farms, help them learn what's actually growing around them, connect them to the fact that food doesn't just come from HEB, but comes from the earth itself, and allows a much more holistic learning experience for them, and hopefully is going to raise consumers, kind of this next generation of consumers that are connected to their land and their food. Yeah, so, and of course, land access is a huge, huge part of that as well.
Thank you, Anna Marie. I'm going to need to move us into closing soon, so I wanted to just open it up if there's any, thoughts, comments, questions that are on the tip of your tongue that you want to share with our group, or ask of any of our panelists or hosts here today. Also want to invite anyone to make any announcements. We have a few minutes. If you have anything cool, interesting, fun, educational, happening in the next few weeks, we'd love to open it up. You know, you can drop something in the chat. You can come off mute and share what you got going on. After that, we'll send the evaluation link. But yeah, any announcements to share?
I would like to share that we will be in Floresville, Texas tomorrow, selling buffalo meat at a Native American powwow. And anybody in Texas, you all are more than invited to attend. It is open to the public. And if you're ever interested in where to access bison meat from Texas Tribal Buffalo Project, we have all our information on our website. And I would love to continue discussing and encouraging everybody to keep on pursuing your dreams and your goals, never give up, and always, always, always just know that, you know, we are not alone.
Yeah, I have 2 talks coming up. One is the Agricultural Law Conference in New Orleans. So that's going to be with a lot of the big ag law firms. So I'm really excited about that because I am super crunchy granola, but I like to also try to see what's going on in the corporate space. So I'll be happy to share any insights with the group that I find out. And then I also will be speaking at the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association in Durham, North Carolina, talking about food systems next week. So I'm really excited about that.
Please feel free to email those to me, y'all, and we can make sure that that stuff gets out to the group. Any other announcements from anyone in the group?
I can also share, I would plug Lucille one more time. We are working with Lucille to also expand her farm to school marketing. So if anyone in your school community is interested in potentially getting more bison into school cafeterias, you can reach out to Lucille or to SFC and we can help make that happen. SFC is also facilitating Texas Farm to School Learning Collaborative. So if you're interested in learning more about farm to school work that's happening across Texas, we would love to get you involved in that group.
I'm just gonna shamelessly plug SFC's farmers markets. We run farmers markets all year round, every Saturday from 9 to 1. We have 2 locations in Austin. We run double up food bucks at all area farmers markets, which doubles the value of SNAP and WIC benefits. Fresh for Less mobile markets are still active and becoming physical locations. They were curbside delivery throughout the pandemic. So lots of good stuff going on in terms of connecting with farmers and food access here in the Austin area. Come get to know your farmers. I'm sure many of you are farmers market shoppers on the weekly or monthly or as often as you can. But if you haven't visited, come on out. We'd be happy to welcome you there.
We're doing shameless plugs. I got one too.
Nuts, Arlo, you got me.
Yeah. We are launching a Seeds of Change program here at Sustainable Food Center. And so it's our first time to really put a focus on how can we lean into community support to foster our recurring donations. So you can follow the link that I just dropped here in the chat and maybe decide that you want to support our mission with a monthly or quarterly donation. And that can be as little as $5 a month or $5 a quarter. So maybe instead of buying, I don't know, something that costs $5 a coffee once a month, you can change that coffee to donating dollars to transform the food system here in Texas. So please feel free to follow that link and join our Seeds of Change initiative. There's lots of cool perks that come with that. We have raffles and events in person here in Austin. So anyways, thank y'all for listening and thank y'all for joining us today.
And I'm gonna follow up real quick with a plug for the Sustainable Food Center's Happy Kitchen, La Cocina Alegre cooking classes. They are bilingual cooking and nutrition education classes. A few of our facilitators are here today, Maria, Selene, and we've been offering those classes for about 25 years in the Austin and surrounding communities. And the classes focus on be in a happy environment, teaching how to use fruits and vegetables and whole foods in traditional ingredients and traditional recipes.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I guess, so just two last things. First of all, we love to plan these encuentros together with our community. So we host these annually, virtually, and we will have a community planning session for our next encuentro, which will be in 2023, probably, well, we don't know yet. We're going to figure that out together. So we will have a planning session. Please stay tuned for an invitation to join that. It's really an opportunity to talk about what kinds of topics we want to cover, what kinds of speakers we want to engage, how we want to dive into these conversations, what we want to change about this space or improve. So it's really, you know, a great opportunity to work together with a collaborative team that's excited to bring these kinds of learnings and opportunities to connect here to the space together. And very lastly, and importantly, we would really appreciate your feedback. We're going to drop a link to a survey here in the chat. This will also come to you in an email following this event. It's only going to take you a couple minutes, and it really helps us learn about what we did well, what we can improve next time, so that we can continue to bring you engaging, informative, and, you know, exciting spaces to connect around issues that we face together in the food system and in the justice movement more broadly. So I just want to thank you all again on behalf of the entire team at SFC, to our participants for joining, to our panelists for sharing so much wonderful information, knowledge, spirit. This has been a wonderful event together, and really appreciate you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank y'all for having me. Everybody have a wonderful, awesome, great day and weekend.
Thank you.